The cabin that followed me home. I only stayed there one night, one stupid night, but that cabin never left me. You ever book one of those cheap getaways? No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just you and nature? That's what I wanted. A weekend to clear my head. I just quit my job, my relationship was in shambles, and I figured solitude would fix it. So I found this listing online, the Hollow Pines cabin. Looked cozy enough in the photos. Too cozy, maybe. When I got there, something felt off. The trees leaned too close, like they'd grown around the place to keep it hidden. The front door was slightly ajar, and the air smelled like damp pine and something sour underneath. Still, I told myself I was imagining it. City brain. Too much caffeine. Inside, it was warm. Too warm. Fire burning low, though no one was there before me. The floorboards creaked even when I stood still. And that first night, when the wind howled against the windows, I could have sworn I heard footsteps pacing right above me, but I was alone, or supposed to be. There was one more thing, though. Over the mantel hung a mirror, ornate, black-framed, warped in a way that made reflections bend like water. When I walked past, the glass trembled as if someone had just brushed it from the other side. My reflection flickered, not gone, just a heartbeat out of sync with me. I stared at it for a long time, convincing myself it was old glass, nothing more. But even after I went to bed, I could feel it. The weight of eyes pressing down from the ceiling, the soft creak of someone leaning on the railing of the loft I hadn't explored yet. I should have left then, but I didn't. Because here's the thing about people like me, we always think we can rationalize fear, until fear decides it's done waiting. The dream started that night, always the same. Me walking through the cabin, hearing someone follow, but every time I turned, I was the one walking behind myself. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heartbeat sinking with the creak of the floorboards. On the second morning, I noticed something strange. The window in the kitchen faced a different view. Not the forest anymore, but my street back home. My car, my porch, even the old red mailbox. I laughed it off, took a photo, but when I checked my phone later, the picture was gone. That evening, thunder rolled in like it had a score to settle. I heard knocks, soft, deliberate on the walls. Not the door, the walls. I shouted for whoever was out there, and the echo came back from inside the house. That was when I saw it, a handprint on the fogged window. On the inside. I packed my things and left that night, or thought I did. The GPS led me down a dirt road that wasn't there before. My headlights cut through trees that seemed to rearrange themselves with every turn. 10 minutes, 20, 40. Somehow, I was still in the same stretch of woods. The cabin's porch light glowed faintly behind me no matter how far I drove. Finally, I burst out onto asphalt. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. My town's welcome sign flickered into view and my phone buzzed back to life. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't dare. Home. Sweet, normal home. Except the next morning, when I looked out my bedroom window, I saw it. The cabin. Sitting across the street where an empty lot had been for years. Its porch light swaying like a pendulum. I called the police. They sent a car. By the time it arrived, the cabin was gone. Just grass and trash cans. The officers gave me a look, the kind reserved for drunks and conspiracy theorists, and left. But that night, I heard the same knocks on my apartment walls. The same echo answering back from somewhere it shouldn't. The air smelled like damp pine. My reflection in the bathroom mirror smiled a beat too late. I hadn't left the cabin. I just dragged it home with me. When I got home, I couldn't shake the smell of that cabin, the mix of wet wood and burnt pine. It clung to my clothes, my sheets, even my skin. But what really got me was when I saw it again, outside my window, across the street. Same cabin, same light in the window. The forest behind it where there shouldn't be one. I blinked, looked again, it was gone. Then came the dreams again, sharper, clearer. Every time I'd wake up to that faint creaking sound. But this time, it wasn't coming from memory. It was downstairs. I told myself not to go, not to look, but fear has its own gravity. You fall into it whether you want to or not. One night, lightning flashed, and through the window I saw the cabin again, but closer. Its front door was open, swinging in the wind. Something stood inside the frame. Not a person exactly, just a shape, blurred and crooked, like my own outline cast onto old wood. I grabbed a flashlight. My hands were shaking so hard the beam quivered against the walls. Step by step, I moved toward the door. The air outside was wrong, heavy, syrup thick, smelling of pine and soil. And then, without meaning to, without even remembering crossing the street, I was standing on the cabin's porch. My apartment behind me was gone. Trees towered where the city should have been. The open door breathed heat into my face. I took one step back. The porch creaked. Something creaked behind me, echoing the same sound. I turned, and there I was, standing in the doorway, my reflection, my smile, my eyes, but darker, deeper, hollow like windows with no glass. It raised its hand and beckoned me in. I tried to run. My legs didn't listen. My body moved forward, drawn like iron to a magnet. When I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut. The flashlight flickered out. Only the firelight remained, orange and low. And from the black glass of the window, my reflection leaned close and whispered, "Welcome home." I tried escaping again. I ran out the door into the forest, through the rain, screaming for help until my throat tore. But the trees never ended. Every direction led me back to that porch. Every time I touched the doorknob, lightning struck, and I was back inside. I smashed the mirrors, tore down the curtains, tried burning the place. The flames hissed and shrank before they spread, like the air refused to let the fire breathe. It was as if the cabin itself didn't just trap me, it swallowed anything that could destroy it. Time became soft. Hours folded into hours. My watch stopped, my phone stayed dead. Sometimes it was night, sometimes it was day, but the light through the windows never matched the clock on the wall. I tried sleeping, hoping it was all a dream, but when I woke, there was another me standing by the door, soaked in rain, whispering, "You shouldn't have left." It stared at me like an animal sizing up its prey. Its eyes weren't eyes anymore, just twin pools of black glass reflecting the firelight. The voice was mine, but older, cracked, like wood splitting under pressure. Every time I moved, it mirrored me, one step behind, one breath delayed. I yelled at it, I begged, I even tried attacking it, but my hands passed through like smoke. The thing only smiled, then faded into the corner of the room, leaving footprints of wet pine needles across the floorboards. I've stopped trying. There's no outside, no before, only this. The cabin's walls shift like lungs around me, breathing me in deeper each night. Sometimes I sit by the window. Sometimes I see myself outside, trying to break in, hammering fists against visible glass. Sometimes I see the road leading to my old apartment. Sometimes I see faces I don't recognize, passing hikers, couples with backpacks, people who won't listen to the warnings I scrawl on the fogged glass. And sometimes I see you, standing where I once stood, looking in. If you do, if you see a light in the woods, a cabin where there shouldn't be one, don't come closer. Because if you knock, if you even touch the door, it already knows your name. Now, I don't live anywhere, not really. I exist between doors that always lead back here. The cabin isn't a place, it's a memory that remembers you. Days blur, nights loop. Every time I think I've escaped, when I open a door and feel fresh air, the smell of pine hits first. The creak of the same floorboards follows. Then the sound of my own footsteps, one beat behind. I stop calling for help. Phones don't work here. When I write notes, they vanish. The ink seeps into the wood, feeding it. Sometimes I hear other voices, a man sobbing, a woman whispering a prayer, a child laughing somewhere deep in the walls. Maybe they were here before me. Maybe they are me. The cabin shifts now. It doesn't need to hide in the woods anymore. It's learning, expanding. Every reflection, every shadow, every darkened window could be its doorway. Sometimes I wonder if it's following you now too. Maybe that's why you're still here, listening. Maybe it's watching you through the glass of your screen, marking the sound of your breath. If you ever see a faint cabin light flicker outside your window, don't look twice. Don't go near it. Because once it sees you looking, it knows where you live. And once you step inside, there's no getting out. The dinner's always hot, the lantern always sways, and the forest, it's always hungry. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to like this video. It helps others find it and keeps this channel growing. Make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one, the kind that make you check your locks before bed. And share it with someone who loves a good scare, or someone who might need a warning. Thanks for listening and watching. There's another story waiting for you right there on your screen. I'll see you back here tomorrow, if I'm still me, the Whispering Woodline. You ever move somewhere thinking you're running toward peace, only to realize you've just cornered yourself with your own mind? That was me, a struggling writer with one half-finished novel, a coffee addiction, and a growing fear that maybe the silence I'd been craving would finally expose what I'd been avoiding, myself. The cabin was cheap, tucked between skeletal pines and a frozen lake in northern Maine, the kind of quiet that hums. Locals said no one stayed there long, something about the woodline never sleeping. I laughed it off. Writers are suckers for atmosphere, right? The first few nights were perfect. Firelight, snow outside, the sound of my own breathing. But around midnight, when the wind started threading through the trees, I could have sworn I heard my name, just faintly. Whispered, not spoken. I told myself it was the wind, or maybe the creak of the old cabin settling. But the thing about isolation is, it starts teaching you to doubt your own logic. By the fourth night, I noticed patterns. The whispers came when I stopped writing. The moment I'd pause, when my fingers hovered uselessly over the keys, that's when I'd hear it. My name. Closer. More deliberate. Sometimes it sounded almost human. Other times, like the trees themselves were learning to speak. One night, I opened the window, just to prove I wasn't losing it. Snow drifted in, soft and harmless. But the air outside felt charged, alive in a way that made my teeth ache. The pines stood still, yet something moved between them. Not seen, but felt. That's when I realized it wasn't the wind whispering. It was something waiting, and it knew my name. I told myself it was isolation getting to me. Cabin fever. Writers go a little crazy. It's part of the myth. I tried music, whiskey, even recorded the sound one night. Just wind on playback. Nothing strange. But then came the footsteps. Not on the porch, around the cabin. Slow, barefoot, like someone pacing, circling, learning the rhythm of my breathing. Every morning, I found tracks in the snow, thin and pale, like the imprint of a child's foot, but too long, the toes splayed like roots. They stopped at the door and started again from the other side. I moved my bed away from the window, closed the curtains, slept with the lamp on. It didn't help, because then the whispers moved closer. They weren't coming from outside anymore. They were in the walls, soft, constant, layered voices, saying my name like a prayer and a warning all at once. I tried to write to distract myself, but every time I touched the pen, the words came out wrong. Not my story anymore, theirs. Lines I'd never thought of appeared in my own handwriting, curling across the page like frost. Whole paragraphs appeared overnight in my journal, descriptions of me, sleeping, in the third person. I called the nearest town, no answer. Phone lines dead. The snow kept falling, heavier each night. I'd wake to find my footprints erased, but the barefoot ones still there, clearer than before. Then I started seeing them. Not full faces, reflections, in the kettle's metal sheen, in the frost on the window. A pale outline just over my shoulder, eyes like pinpricks of light. I stopped sleeping. Coffee, cold showers, even slapping myself awake. Didn't matter. Every time I drifted, I'd hear the whispering right by my ear. Sometimes it said my name. Sometimes it said hurry. The last straw, my laptop. I left it open on the table one night, blank document glowing. When I came back, a single sentence stared at me from the screen. Open quote, step into the woodline, close quote. The cursor blinked like an eye. That's when I realized it wasn't trying to scare me. It was inviting me. That night, sleep wasn't an option. The whispering had built into a low chant, rising and falling like breath. I sat on the edge of the bed, fingers dug into my knees, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. It changed, became scratching, slow, purposeful, not from the roof or the floorboards inside the walls. I snapped, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, jammed it into the drywall, tore at it until splinters and insulation rained down. Behind it wasn't wood, it was paper, stacks of it, pages stuffed into the cavities like nests. Every one written in my handwriting, but describing things I hadn't done yet. Me walking barefoot into the snow, me standing at the tree line, me smiling at something I couldn't see. I backed away, heart hammering. The cabin groaned, a sound like a living thing shifting its weight. I turned and saw my typewriter across the room, silent for days. The keys started moving, slow, deliberate, like invisible hands pressing them. One letter at a time, the words appeared. Open quote, you opened the woodline, close quote. The air in the cabin went thin, heavy like being underwater. My ears rang. Outside, the trees moved, though there was no wind, leaning inward as if the forest itself was drawing breath. Then came the echo, a sound from the tree line that mimicked my own voice but wrong, stretched and layered. The walls pulsed. Paper fluttered like wings. The whispering stopped all at once, replaced by one voice. Not a whisper, not a chant. Mine, a perfect copy of my voice, speaking from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Open quote, come back. Close quote. I screamed, but what came out of my mouth wasn't mine anymore. The sound bent in the air, deep and hungry. My own voice answered from the trees outside, calling me by name like a lover coaxing me out. I stumbled to the door, hand on the knob. The barefoot tracks in the snow were fresh now, circling, closing in. And in the window's reflection, I saw myself standing at the edge of the woodline, smiling, holding out a hand. There was no way back to normal life. Not now. Not ever. When I woke, the fire was nothing but gray ash and teeth of cold gnawed through the room. Snow had drifted in through a shattered window, coating the floor like the inside of a coffin. My manuscript sat on the table, finished. Every page covered in writing. My writing, except I hadn't touched a single key. The silence was heavy, deafening. The kind of silence that feels like it's listening. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over, that whatever had been clawing at me had burned itself out. Until I looked at the walls. My words, whole paragraphs from the story, were scrawled into the wood itself, blackened and charred like veins under skin. I stuffed clothes into a bag, hands shaking. My laptop, my notes, anything to prove I was still real. I tried the front door, locked. The back door, locked. The windows wouldn't budge, the frames pulsing faintly under my palms like a heartbeat. The cabin felt warm and damp, as though it had started to breathe with me. I shouted, but my voice didn't echo. It just sank into the walls. From somewhere deep inside the house came the first keystroke, then another. A slow, steady rhythm of typing. The sound wound through the rooms, not mechanical but organic, like bones clicking together. I pressed my ear to the wall. The voices were gone, but I could feel them, waiting, listening. The typewriter clacked louder, as if it were moving closer, though it stayed in the other room. The words I'd seen on the page were now crawling across the floorboards, letters like shadows stretching toward my feet. I backed into a corner, clutching my bag. The cabin exhaled. The pages on the table fluttered without wind, and I caught the title on the first page, one I hadn't chosen, one I'd never written. Open quote, The Whispering Woodline. Close quote. Somewhere in the walls the typing stopped, then softly, a whisper that wasn't mine. Open quote, Step outside. Close quote. It's been weeks since that night. The storm passed, but I never left. Maybe I couldn't. The doors finally opened, but the forest outside wasn't the same. The trees stand closer now, like they've been watching, listening, learning. I tried walking out once. The snow swallowed my steps. When I turned around, the cabin was closer than before. No matter which direction I move, it's always waiting for me. I stopped fighting it. I sit by the cold hearth now, wrapped in a blanket stiff with ash. Each morning, new pages appear on the table, pages written in my handwriting, though I don't remember touching the keys. They tell me what happens next. Sometimes it's a scene from my life, sometimes from yours. The whispers are back, softer this time, patient. They don't scare me anymore. They hum when I breathe. They finish my sentences. They tell me things, stories I didn't know I remembered. Maybe they were always there, hiding in the static between thought and silence. Maybe that's what writing really is, something ancient speaking through us. I've come to understand something. Peace was never in the silence. It was in surrender. Because when I stopped resisting, the fear became purpose. The pages keep coming and I keep reading. My story continues, even if I'm no longer the one writing it. So if you ever find yourself driving through northern Maine and someone tells you about a cabin by a frozen lake, don't go near the whispering woodline. Don't stop, don't look, and for God's sake, don't listen when it calls your name. Because once it learns how to say it, it never forgets how to write it. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to The Whispering Woodline. If you enjoyed this story, tap the like button. It helps more people find the channel and keeps the stories coming. Subscribe for daily chilling tales and share this one with someone who loves a good scare. There's another story waiting for you on your screen right now. Go on, click it, and I'll see you back here tomorrow, if you can still sleep tonight. The lantern at the door. I still remember the way the lantern swayed that night, like it was breathing. We weren't supposed to be out that long. It was meant to be a quick hike before sundown, a dumb little adventure to prove we weren't city soft. I was with two friends, Jake, always laughing too loud, and Melissa, who kept filming everything for her vlog. The trail twisted deeper than the map showed, and before long, our phones lost signal. By the time we admitted we were lost, the sun was bleeding into the horizon. That's when we saw it, a cabin through the trees. Old, wooden, leaning slightly, but there was a glow. A single lantern swinging by the door. The wind should have snuffed it out, but it didn't. It just kept swaying like it was waiting for us. We called out, but no one answered. The air was cold enough to sting, and night was rolling in fast. Jake said we should check it out. Better a creepy cabin than freezing our asses off. Melissa hesitated, scanning with her camera, but the moment that light flickered across her lens, she said, "Yeah, let's go." The snow had started falling, thick and soft, swallowing our footprints almost as soon as we made them. I remember thinking how quiet it felt, how the trees seemed to lean closer as we walked. Every crunch of snow under our boots sounded too loud, too alive. The closer we got, the more the lantern seemed to move, not just swinging, but pulsing. Its glow waxed and waned like a heartbeat. When we finally stepped onto the porch, it stopped swaying altogether, perfectly still, as if it had been holding its breath for us. Then, from somewhere inside, we heard the faintest scrape, like a chair being dragged slowly across the floor. Jake grinned. "See, told you someone's home." But when I looked through the frosted window, I didn't see anyone. Just a table set for three, steam curling from untouched bowls, and a fire that burned without smoke. And that lantern, now still as stone, still waiting. Jake grinned that stupid grin he always wore when he was nervous. "Relax, it's probably an animal." He moved toward the pantry, boots creaking against the old floorboards. The air felt heavy, thick like breathing soup. Melissa's camera light flicked on, slicing through the dim cabin glow. "Jake, wait," I whispered. He didn't. The door opened an inch. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was nothing, just the soft crackle of fire and the faint hum of the lantern outside. Then came the smell, damp wood, rot, something metallic underneath, like rust or blood. Jake yanked the door wider, empty shelves, a few cans, an old broom, nothing else. He exhaled, smirking. "See? Pantry ghost." He shut it again, but the sound didn't stop. Knock, knock, knock. This time it came from inside the walls. Melissa screamed and dropped her camera. The screen cracked, the lens spinning wild across the wooden floor. The footage glitched, the lantern's light flashing in perfect rhythm with the knocking. I grabbed her hand. "We're leaving, now." We bolted for the front door. Except it wasn't there anymore. Where the door had been was just smooth wood, perfectly seamless. Melissa started to cry. Jake cursed, pounding his fists against it, splinters biting into his knuckles. Then the fire went out, just gone. No smoke, no ember, no sound. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the lantern outside still glowed. Its light cut through the frost-covered window, faint but alive. And within that glow, three silhouettes, three people, standing, watching. I felt the temperature drop fast, cold enough to bite through bone. Melissa whispered, "Who are they?" Jake raised the poker, but his hand was shaking. The figures didn't move. Not until the lantern flickered once more. Then one of them lifted an arm and waved. Jake whispered, "They're us." And he was right. Their faces, their clothes, everything matched, except they were smiling. And their lantern burned brighter with every flicker of ours. That was the moment I realized we weren't guests in that cabin. We were replacements. The darkness wasn't empty. It moved. Like shadows remembering they used to be human. I could still feel Melissa's hand gripping mine, trembling, slick with sweat. Then, a sound, not breathing, mimicking breathing, as if the house itself was trying to pretend it was alive. The lantern on the table flared suddenly, bursting with light that shouldn't have existed in that room. And there he was again, the man with Jake's eyes, stepping closer. The glow from his lantern wasn't warm, it was hungry. He whispered something. I couldn't hear it, not really. It was like his words crawled inside my head instead of through my ears. Then he reached for Melissa. She screamed, a sound I'll never forget, but the light swallowed it whole. When it faded, she was gone too. Not vanished, replaced. Standing beside him now, smiling with those empty, wrong eyes. Her camera still hung from her neck, recording everything. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, lungs refusing to fill. "What do you want?" I shouted. The man tilted his head, and every reflection in his lantern turned toward me at once. Faces overlapping faces, mouths twitching, eyes fluttering open and shut. He whispered, "Someone has to keep the lantern lit." Then I saw them through the window. Dozens of cabins stretching into the trees, each with a single glowing lantern by the door. And in every one, a different version of the same nightmare. I ran for the wall where the door used to be and slammed into it. Wood cracked under my shoulder, pain shooting down my side. I didn't care. I just kept hitting it. Splinters bit deep, the light behind me swelling hotter and brighter until it burned through my eyelids. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing outside. The cold air cut deep, and behind me, the cabin door had reappeared, shut tight, the lantern swaying gently beside it. Through the frosted window, I saw a man sitting at the table, his face half shadowed, half familiar. He looked up at me. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the lantern flared once more, and everything went white. I stumbled backward, knocking over the chair, heart pounding so hard it felt like the floorboards were echoing. The room had reset itself. The fire crackled again, calm and steady, like it hadn't swallowed anyone. Jake's chair was gone, Melissa's too. Only mine remained. On the table, 2 plates waited, the same stew, steam curling lazily upward, as if daring me to pretend everything was normal. I whispered their names, Jake, Melissa, but my voice sounded distant, hollow. The air didn't carry it, it absorbed it. The lantern outside swayed once more, gentle and rhythmic, that slow, hypnotic movement. I don't know why, but I walked to the window. The glass felt warm under my fingertips. Outside wasn't the forest anymore. It was blank, just black, like the world had been erased. Then the whispering started. Not voices, just the sound of my name, stretched thin through the wind, repeating over and over, Eli. Each time, it came from a different direction, behind me, under the floor, inside my skull. I covered my ears and screamed, but the sound bent in on itself, muffled before it could escape. When I looked back at the window, my reflection was watching me, but not following my movements. It blinked when I didn't. It smiled when I couldn't. And then I saw them, Melissa and Jake, standing behind my reflection, eyes glowing faintly in the lantern's light. Their faces were calm, peaceful, wrong. Like the photo on the wall had come to life. I stumbled toward the door again, pulled, kicked, begged, nothing. Every time I turned back, the reflection was closer. Its breath fogged the glass from the inside. Then I noticed the lantern outside dimming slowly as though it were running out of air. With each flicker, the reflection grew darker, except for the eyes. Those stayed bright, alive, waiting. The whisper came again, softer now, almost kind. Your turn. I stared down at the table one last time. The second plate was still full, untouched. But the first, mine, was empty, completely clean. That's when I saw my reflection lift the spoon and start to eat. I don't know how long it's been. Days don't pass here, not really. There's no sun, no moon, just the steady pulse of that lantern outside the window. Sometimes it flickers and for a second I think it's dying, but it never does. It just keeps burning. Like me. The cabin feels smaller now, as though the walls are leaning in to listen. The fire never dies, the stew never cools, and the chair across from me always waits, empty, patient. I used to scream for help, used to pound at the door until my hands bled. But the cabin doesn't like noise. It prefers silence. And over time, I learned to give it what it wanted. When new footsteps crunch through the snow, I feel it, that hum in the air, the same one I felt the night we arrived. The lantern outside sways again, slow and expectant, casting light through the frosted window. Then the doorknob turns, and I smile. They always look relieved at first, cold, tired, desperate for warmth. I know that look. I wore it once. I stand by the pantry now, waiting, the lantern in my hand casting soft gold light. It's warm in here, always warm. The table is set for 3. Steam curls from the plates. The smell of thyme and apples fills the air. When they ask, "Are you the owner?" I just nod. Because in a way, I am. The dinner's always hot. The lantern always sways. And the forest, it's always hungry. So if you ever find yourself lost in the woods and see a light ahead, steady, golden, impossibly still, don't follow it, because it's not leading you home. It's inviting you in. Thank you for listening to The Lantern at the Door. If this story gave you chills, do me a favor. Tap that like button so more people can find it, and subscribe for new horror stories every night. Share this video with someone who loves a good scare. There's another story waiting for you on your screen right now. Go watch it next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.